Hey everybody, Antoni here with the review of Mussorgsky's Boris Godunov with conductor Kirill Karabits, which I saw at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. This marks the second time I saw this particular production because I wanted to see the great and magnificent Sir Bryn Terfel perform the titular anti-hero. It should come off as no surprise that throughout all my life, more specifically ever since I was 10 until now, I have been listening to Mr. Terfel's voice in records and even, for the most part, in YouTube clips. And I have been wanting to know what his bass baritone voice was going to sound like live. And I was not disappointed by the results. In fact, I was completely enthralled. Mr. Tafel managed to really embody this anti heroic tyrant of a tsar that he managed to do such a magnificent job all the way through. He had this sort of animalistic type of acting style which made his portrayal all the more palpable, and his voice managed to ring out throughout the theater, which should be no surprise as Mr. Terfel also sang a lot of Wagner and combined that with some forays to Baroque and even folk music. Oh, and lest I forget about Mozart. He definitely proved himself to be a versatile singing actor. And while I do prefer voices like, let's say, Jerome Hines, Cesare Siepi, Giorgio Tozzi, Nikolai Gyaurov, and even Nikola Gyuselev, as they are essentially basso cantantes, and in general, I always prefer it when a basso cantante sings this particular role, I still have to give my hat off to Bryn Terfel for doing such an amazing job, not only singing this role to the greatest of his abilities and making his voice carry out all throughout the theater with such aplomb and such power and such relentlessness, but also giving Boris his suffering, his agony, his anxiety, and everything about him that makes him such a complex character. So, Sir Bryn Terfel, bravo to you and all of your magnificent efforts as a great, powerful, and awesome singing actor. Ante Yerkunitsa strikes again as P-Men, and as always, he managed to make great use of his basso profondo voice to make this particular character come alive. His tone remained focused and absolutely virile all the way through. There was not one moment where I felt bored, nor was there any moment where I felt like he was insecure. He managed to pull it off with such strength, not only in terms of his voice, but also in terms of his skills as a singing actor. Alexei Botnarchuk was wonderful in the character part of Varlam. His trademark basso cantante voice and everything about him made him excellent in my eyes and ears. And I cannot wait to hear and see him tackle Boris himself. Who knows, maybe in 5 or 10 years' time, I can definitely be sure that he will tackle this challenging role. But as for his performance as Varlam, I thought he was able to combine a sense of humor while also having this type of power in his voice, which made him all the more magnificent as a singing actor. Dong-Hwan Lee as Cherkalov was brilliant as he's always been. He was sturdy in his portrayal. He was strong in his mannerisms. And more than anything, he continued to use that fine, focused, and virile, dramatic baritone voice to the greatest of his abilities. We also had a relatively new name for me who managed to make such a striking impression as Prince Shwisky, and he was Maxim Paster. Now, I only knew him recently because I never heard about this particular tenor before until I read his biography and the repertoire he covers. He essentially specializes in a lot of the lyric and at times spinto tenor roles. Roles like Lenski from Eugene Onegin, Czekalinsky from Pik Dam, and a lot of other roles suited to this full lyric tenor. I basically heard his rendition of Kuda Kuda from Onegin and even Amare Chiare, and I have to say that his voice had that brilliance, and I wasn't so sure how well it was going to hold up live. And I have to say that his voice held up brilliantly. I could tell that this gentleman had to pace himself in terms of how he was going to make his voice ring throughout the theater. In his very first appearance, he was able to use a little bit of subtlety in his voice until he goes Sprechgesang in some occasions. Mind you, he wasn't the only one to have gone Sprechgesang in terms of his delivery. Sir Bryn Terfel also did that, but it also was used to such raw and visceral effect. Here, I thought he was able to use certain moments of Sprechgesang to make Shwisky a sleazy, snake-like, and absolutely ruthless creature, while not always doing too much on stage. He was able to embody this role with the appropriate amount of sneakiness and sleaziness that I had my eyes glued to him from beginning to end. He was that brilliant of a singing actor, and his voice was focused, clean, and it showed no signs of aging nor tiredness whatsoever. He was able to make such a great portrayal of this anti-heroic prince that I was totally immersed with his portrayal of Prince Shwisky. Robert Watson strikes again as the false Dmitri Grigory Otrepyev, and I thought that his performance in this particular role was a lot better than I expected from 2 years ago. His voice grew in richness and in stature, and he's only in his early 30s. This is a gentleman whose future continues to blossom and blossom so brilliantly that I cannot wait what other roles are in store for this young spinto tenor. He was able to bring so much vivacity to Grigory that I was really immersed in his performance. He had a certain charm to him which made him all the more lifelike, and for that he deserves the greatest rounds of kudos any spinto tenor can ever have, and I definitely will continue to support and salute him for all of his efforts, no matter what they are, as his performance as Grigory Otrepyev was stellar, as it's always been. Mayu Vatulwoto was a gorgeous and rich-voiced nurse, and she was able to take great advantage of her round, rich, earthy mezzo-contralto voice and make this particular character come alive. She was able to use such velvety tones to make her portrayal come alive, and she was able to use that focus that she has in her voice and do so in a way which made her bloom so beautifully. The same thing I can say about Annika Schlicht as the innkeeper. This is yet another fine young dramatic mezzo who has a brilliant future ahead of her. Just by listening to her voice, I can tell how much she grew as a singer. She grew from doing all of these lyric mezzo roles to nowadays finding herself in a lot of these more dramatic roles. And she's still quite young. She definitely not only has a brilliant future in these dramatic mezzo roles, but she continues to prove to the audience that she is an artist who cultivates her craft effectively, brilliantly, and with so much heart and dedication. Alexandra Hutton was a gorgeous and lovely Xenia, as she's always been. She continues to use her silvery, light lyric soprano voice to bring this particular ingenue to life, and as always, she is a pro in roles like this. I also have to give a lot of kudos to Philipp Ammer, who is a member of the children's chorus of the Chor Academy Dortmund. He was able to embody Fyodor with such loveliness and genuineness and absolute love that I was able to feel so invested in his performance. And I salute this youth for bringing out so much tenderness to this fine character. We also had such magnificent singing found in Jörg Schörner's characterful Misail, Matthew Newland's sturdy and absolutely gorgeous Holy Fool, Ya-Chung Huang's fine, elegant, and dashing Boyar, Andrew Harris's masculine and dominant Nikitich, Stephen Bronk's steely Mityutka, and Samuel Dale Johnson's finely sung border policeman. So overall, the singing was magnificent, especially if you have a veteran superstar like Sir Bryn Terfel, who managed to embody Boris Godunov with such a visceral quality, not only found in his voice, but also in his acting. This is a gentleman who continues to show how dedicated he is as a singing actor, how strong he is as an overall performer, and how much weight he managed to carry as this particular anti-hero. He was the absolute star of the evening, and I salute him for making this particular czar come to life with his trademark bass baritone voice, which is rich throughout all the registers. His big and absolutely grandiose stage presence and the insurmountable dedication he has as an overall performer. I can never go wrong with Bryn Terfel as Boris Godunov. And the conducting done by Kirill Karabits was, as always, fine all the way through. He made sure that the orchestra paid close attention to the main singers, especially Mr. Terfel, but there were also times that the orchestra kind of drowned out certain singers like Maxime Pasteur. But other than that, I thought that Maestro Karabits did a fine job with carrying the orchestra through, as he managed to tease out some brilliant melodies. And of course, the chorus and orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin were magnificent, as they always were, and they will always be magnificent until the end of time. So overall, with a great superstar in the form of Bryn Terfel, who managed to carry the weight of this entire performance, as well as being backed up by other magnificent singers found in Ante Yerkunitsa, Alexia Botnarchuk, Robert Watson, Maxime Pasteur, Dong-Hwan Lee, Jörg Schörner, Alexandra Hutton, and many others who managed to do such magnificent jobs. I definitely have to say that This evening was such a great time to watch Mussorgsky's Boris Godunov at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. And for those of you who watched this particular production of Boris Godunov at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, what did you think of it? Did you feel like Bryn Terfel did an amazing job embodying Boris Godunov with his great singing and equally great acting? Did you feel like there was another singer who managed to overshadow Sir Bryn Terfel? Or did you feel like the singing in general was not your cup of tea? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in tomorrow where I review Marina Prudenskaya's lead concert at the Staatsoper unter den Linden. So until then, good night, everybody.